What if the person you trusted most with your health was secretly taking lives instead of saving them? For decades, patients welcomed Harold Shipman into their homes without fear. Nobody suspected that the friendly doctor standing at their doorstep would become one of the most infamous killers the world had ever seen. The quiet English town of Hyde looked peaceful almost every evening because old brick houses, rainy streets, and warm yellow street lights made the town feel calm and safe. And among the most respected people living there was a trusted doctor named Harold Shipman, who spent years building a reputation as someone kind, intelligent, and caring, because unlike many busy doctors, he personally visited elderly patients inside their homes, listened carefully whenever lonely people needed someone to talk to, and treated vulnerable patients with patience that made families trust him completely, especially old women living alone who slowly became emotionally dependent on him. While some patients trusted him so deeply, they even gave him spare keys to their homes, believing he genuinely cared about their safety. But hidden beneath the friendly smile existed something deeply disturbing, because unknown to everyone around him, Harold Shipman had secretly developed a dangerous obsession with power and control over life and death itself. And over time, that obsession slowly transformed into something horrifying as he carefully targeted elderly patients who lived alone because their deaths would attract less suspicion, while he quietly learned everything about their routines, including when relatives visited, who checked on them regularly, and whether anyone would seriously question their deaths. And once Shipman felt completely safe, he secretly injected victims with deadly overdoses of powerful medical drugs before calmly watching them die while behaving like a caring doctor trying to help. And because most victims were elderly, their deaths appeared natural to grieving families who never imagined the trusted doctor himself had caused them. While after each murder, Shipman personally signed death certificates, explaining the deaths as old age or illness, before encouraging families to cremate the bodies which destroyed physical evidence forever, allowing him to continue killing for years without attracting suspicion, because nobody wanted to believe a respected doctor could secretly be a murderer. While outside his crimes, Shipman continued living a completely normal life as he attended social gatherings, joked with co-workers, treated innocent patients daily, and walked through town smiling at neighbors who had absolutely no idea death was hiding behind his calm, professional appearance. And over the years, the murders continued increasing, especially after Shipman opened his own clinic, where he gained even greater control over patient records, prescriptions, and private visits without anyone monitoring him carefully. While several nurses and local doctors quietly started noticing disturbing patterns, because many elderly women seemed healthier than expected, shortly before suddenly dying after being alone with Shipman. And in many cases, victims were discovered strangely sitting fully dressed inside their homes, as if death arrived unexpectedly within seconds. Yet every suspicion disappeared, because Shipman always behaved calmly during investigations. And nobody believed someone so respected could secretly be responsible for so many deaths, until eventually one local doctor named Linda Reynolds became seriously disturbed after comparing death statistics between clinics, because despite running a much smaller medical practice, Shipman somehow had more elderly patients dying than doctors responsible for far larger numbers of people, while many of those victims were elderly women found dead shortly after private visits from him, causing Linda Reynolds to officially report her concerns to investigators. But despite a brief investigation, police found no solid evidence against Shipman, because he appeared cooperative, professional, and intelligent enough to explain away every suspicious detail, allowing the case to quietly disappear while Shipman continued killing again almost immediately afterward. But in 1998, he finally made one small mistake that destroyed everything, because one of his final victims was an elderly former mayor named Kathleen Grundy, who died suddenly inside her home shortly after a private visit from Shipman. And just like previous victims, her death initially appeared natural, because Shipman personally signed the death certificate and listed old age as the cause. But days later, Kathleen's daughter, Angela Woodruff, became suspicious after discovering a strange new will, claiming her mother secretly left large amounts of money and property directly to Harold Shipman. And because Angela herself was a lawyer, she immediately noticed several strange details inside the document, including incorrect property information that suggested whoever created the will did not fully understand Kathleen's finances, causing Angela to report everything to police, who reopened the investigation and ordered Kathleen Grundy's body to be exhumed from the grave several days after burial for forensic testing. And when toxicology experts examined the body, they discovered extremely high levels of diamorphine, a powerful drug medically related to heroin, proving her death was not natural at all. While during questioning, Shipman claimed Kathleen secretly used drugs herself and insisted he had written details about her condition inside his computerized medical records before she died. But this became the exact moment his entire empire collapsed, because while secretly editing Kathleen's records after her death, Shipman made one fatal mistake. He didn't realize computers automatically save the exact date and time every file is changed, and when investigators checked the records, they discovered the information about Kathleen using drugs had actually been added after she was already dead, instantly exposing him, while police searching his home also discovered evidence linking him directly to the forged will, because the typewriter used to create the fake document perfectly matched one owned by Shipman, including several damaged letters, appearing identically on both machines. And on September 7, 1998, the respected doctor trusted by the entire town was finally arrested, as terrified families suddenly realized many of their loved ones may have actually been murdered years earlier. While investigators reopened dozens of suspicious deaths connected to Shipman, and slowly uncovered the same horrifying pattern repeated again and again, involving elderly women living alone, deadly injections of diamorphine, false death certificates signed personally by Shipman, and cremations destroying evidence afterward. And as the investigation expanded, experts eventually linked him to more than 200 murders, although many investigators believed the real number could be even higher, because countless bodies had already been cremated years earlier, leaving almost no evidence behind, making Harold Shipman one of the deadliest serial killers in modern history. While during court trials, grieving families listened in horror as prosecutors revealed manipulated medical records, forged documents, and secret drug injections hidden behind ordinary medical visits. Yet despite overwhelming evidence, Shipman continued denying responsibility almost until the very end, and eventually the court sentenced him to life imprisonment for multiple murders before he spent his final years locked inside prison, where he later ended his own life by hanging himself inside his cell, taking many horrifying secrets with him forever, including the true number of people he may have killed. While even today investigators still argue about why Harold Shipman committed so many murders, because some experts believed he became obsessed with controlling life and death, while others believed he simply enjoyed the feeling of power over helpless people who trusted him completely. But whatever the real reason was, one terrifying fact still remains impossible to ignore. For more than 20 years, an entire town unknowingly trusted a serial killer wearing a doctor's white coat while death quietly walked through their front doors, disguised as medical care. Harold Shipman died on January 13, 2004, leaving no note, no confession, and no apology, just silence. And somewhere inside a closed police filing cabinet, there is still a list of names, names of people who may have been murdered, names nobody will ever be able to prove, because the only person who knew the truth took it with him.